Got a new book to talk about, The Lighthouse Effect. We've got author and so many other things we'll include along with that. Steve Pemberton with us today. And first off, Steve, I appreciate you taking the time and excited to talk about this. How about that?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Cameron. I've been looking forward to it.
Now tell us where the Lighthouse Effect, just the idea. I mean, where did the idea first come for you? And this has been a whole mission as well.
It has been, and it really came from the response to my first book. My children were asking, in essence, where my parents were, and I wound up writing a book to answer that question. I thought it was just a family history. What it wound up becoming really was an invitation for other people to share their stories with me. And I think that's true for any of us, Cameron. I mean, you share your story, and it's an opportunity for people to tell you theirs. And then you find these common threads, these common connections that we have that are a lot different than the ones that I think we're sold all the time. Who you voted for, what's your race, what's your gender. There's like this deeper narrative, I think, that's so much more important for us to convey. And so, so you realize, like, wait a minute, I'm on the receiving end of all these stories. And let me get to thinking about these people, like who are the people who I met along my life journey, who I learned something from, and who I think we could all learn something from. And so I wound up writing about these 10 people whose impact out in the world is a lot like the lighthouse, the physical structure that is the lighthouse. And boy, that's been such an honor to be part of their lives, to share their stories, how we connected. And then lastly, I would say I also wanted it very much, Cameron, to be a call to action, to in essence say that each day presents an opportunity for us to be a lighthouse to someone, and also to find one for ourselves. Any single one of us with our life experience, just as we are, can have that kind of effect on someone and be affected by someone in that way.
And we go through the hard times and had some trying times these last couple of weeks. And the other night I was sitting down thinking about, I'd had a rough day, but the problem is I had let it affect the way I treated others. And unfortunately, the way that we deal with the hard times also has a lot to say about us, doesn't it?
It sure does. And in many ways, that's the power of the lighthouse, because the lighthouse knows all about hard times, because the lighthouse, the physical structure that is the lighthouse, exists in a very turbulent world. I mean, the sea is unforgiving. And so every day is a bad day for the lighthouse by and large, right? Winds and storms and weather. And yet there, despite it all, there it still stands. But it does so because it's on a mission. And that mission is you and I. It's quite literally trying to protect our journey. And it does so by saying, well, let me correct your path, or let me show you another path. And the most impactful people in our lives are a lot like the physical structure that is the lighthouse. They don't judge you. They don't ask you how you came to be in the storm. They don't blame you for not knowing your way. Because they see your humanity. And they also know that, your first picture is not your full story. You are not that bad day you just had. Right? They know that. And so this ability to see beyond it is something I think that we can all do. And I think it's necessary, because in our time right now, we are quick to judge as a society. We are quick to anger. We're quick to try and locate you in a different place that doesn't really reflect your life experience and your journey. And it's not serving us well, Cameron. It's really not. So it's incumbent upon all of us to find that different way.
And Steve, through the stories, through the shares that people have made with you as well, what's the common thread of all of the stories? What is it that makes them all fit together?
Oh man, Cam, what a great question. I think for any writer would tell you, there's a story that you intend to write, and then there's the one that emerges as you're writing, right? And, Cameron, all 10 of these people went through something very difficult. and should have broken them, actually. The Vietnam War veteran whose helicopter was down behind enemy lines and comes back to a world that forces him to take that uniform off and deny he ever defended the nation. To the high school teacher who took me in when I was 16 and I had nowhere to go, who was also battling alcoholism at the same time and loneliness and wondered if he was a lighthouse. To a biological uncle that I met many years later who was orphaned as I was, to a family who lost their 18-year-old daughter to a mental health crisis, to a family separation. I mean, these were tough things. And yet the way in which they responded to it is that other common thread that connects them all together. And to a person, it was fascinating when I reached out to them and I said, would you be willing to be part of the book? And they all, to a person, either they or their families had the exact same reaction. Well, why me? I'm just an ordinary person. Like, why would you write about me? To which I said, that's exactly why I want to write about you. So they'd all been through something. They responded to it in a different way. And they also had this just natural humility about it. So at different points in my life, when I met them, they made me really stop and reflect a bit, either on a situation or a circumstance or my own life journey. I think we all have people like that around us, but they're not necessarily the big influences, because our families are supposed to be influences like that. This is more about, that elementary school teacher, something she said to you, the first boss, the person who brought you into the world of radio, for example. Like, those people are who we're talking about. And here's the last thing I say about that. The older we get, the more those people grow in significance to us.
Yeah.
Because you realize, if it wasn't for them, I might not be on this journey that I'm on. And like the lighthouse, you never know who sees you, right? You never know who's drawing strength and example and courage just from your very presence in the world. Sometimes we think I've got to do something heroic, and I got to do something that lands me on the nightly news. And I don't necessarily subscribe to that idea. I think it's the small things. It's the small things that have been the arc of our lives.
And along those lines, talk about the value that each of us has to other individuals, whether it be, this is the kind of the way I say it is, whether you're out at a diner, whether you're dealing with a waitress, whether you're with a checkout person or whatever, just the smile and have a good day can make such a difference in somebody's life.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I'll give you a really good example of this. My wife and I were getting our licenses renewed. We went together, and Karen, I walked up to the counter. The clerk behind the counter, she was having a bad day, and man, I asked her something. It was a simple question. She really snapped at me, and I just let it go. I'm like, okay, she's having a bad day. And that's all I said. Well, my wife goes to another station, like 2 away. So you did not know we were together. Mm-hmm. And so I start pretending like we're not married. So I say over to her, I'm like, so, hey lady, are you married? And she says sometimes. So she and I are having this banter back and forth, but the people behind the counter don't know that we're married. So she and I, and then Karen, so here's the beauty of it. My wife has been in denial about needing glasses for a long time. So now she's got to stare through the goggles, right? And I've been trying to tell her to get glasses. I'm having a field day because she's struggling. And so we were just having such a great time, right? I finished early. I stepped away. When I went out into the parking lot, and then she comes out several minutes later, and she says to me that the clerk who was giving me a hard time walked over to her and gave her a hug. And she said, I really needed to see the two of you today because I was having a bad day. And, it means a temporary interaction, might not ever see her again, probably won't actually, because, I don't frequent the registry of motor vehicles that often if I can help it, right? Try to do that online. But every interaction has that kind of power, right? That it can be just the very thing that somebody needs in the moment. A lot of us wake up in the midst of a struggle that's not evident by looking at us. We kind of harbor a lot of our pains quietly. So yeah, just that kind word, a returned smile. And that's especially for people who serve us, because the pandemic has landed on that sector in a particularly difficult way. You're in a restaurant, you see somebody with a name tag, use their name when you address them. That lets them know that I see your humanity, that this hierarchy of you serving me, that's not really the relationship. The relationship is, I'm a human being and you're a human being. So, I grew up in a blue collar working class town, so I was around that a lot. I know. Ask what time did your shift start? When you're going home. Small things like that is a way of telling people that they matter.
Do you think that since social media and COVID as well, separating people so much, how much more important are those person-to-person few words that we have each day?
Well, the very nature of social media is taking on different intent than we thought. It was intended to provide community, right? And what it's done is purposefully alienate us and create these echo chambers, so much so that we think that the most important thing that we can know about each other is what makes us different. And those person-to-person connections actually tell you a really different story. You have to work at it a little bit. You have to make yourself available, to find those common threads, those common connections. And there's so much hanging in the balance of doing so, because on this current path we're on, that's not going to lead to no good end. Most important thing I think I know about you is your politics or your faith expression. Then I miss this deeper kind of connection that you and I might have, and that we can also find. So even the things that are a source of disagreement to us actually take on a very different understanding. And I'm reminded of this all the time. One of the people that I wrote about was somebody I bumped into on a train. I was describing to her that I was writing about people that I did not know about. And that was my mother and father, who I did not know. But the way I'm saying this to her is if she would not have any idea what I was talking about until she stops me and says, well, actually, I just met my father a few years ago. And so in a moment like that, I would have never thought that was the case. And then, the way that she had established a relationship with her father, that was never going to happen for me, but she was doing so in a way that was forgiving and understanding. And at the time that I met her, I really wasn't in that place. When I remember just walking away, I didn't tell her that, but I just remember walking away thinking, you probably need to revisit how you're thinking about your own parents. But she in that moment doesn't know that interaction is affecting me like that. And I think that's true for every single one of us. You don't know how our interaction is actually touching and affecting somebody else, might get them to think a little bit differently about a situation or circumstance, or like the lighthouse itself, give them the strength to get through a situation.
Now, if we are going through hard times in our lives and we're having a hard time getting past the darkness, what are some of the keys to being a lighthouse, even though, like we've already mentioned, you can be a lighthouse when you're struggling?
Well, the reason I chose a lighthouse is because it symbolized a lot of those characteristics. The first person I wrote about was the high school teacher who took me in. What was the thing that he did that we can all do? Well, he turned my doubts into a destination. The woman I just described to you, what was her lighthouse effect? It was that knowing that the first picture is not the full story. The Vietnam War veteran, what was it that he did? Well, he had the courage to encourage. And what I meant specifically by that was he was vulnerable, in that moment. He would lose his son, actually, to a sudden heart attack on Thanksgiving 3 years ago. He's become a bereavement counselor. The family that lost their child to a mental health crisis, what was the thing that they do? They provide strength and honor. The woman who brought me books when I was a young boy trying to navigate a very difficult situation, what did she do? She gave from where she was with whatever she had, in this case, just a box of books that her 3 sons no longer read. We can all do that. We don't have to be wealthy. We don't have to have a large social media following. We don't have to have crowds cheering our name and our seemingly ordinariness. And we can have this extraordinary impact. There's a great Greek proverb that says a society grows great when the elders of that society plant trees in whose shade they know they will never sit. So every kindness, every interaction, does plant that seed. And though you may never see it, isn't that the essence of faith, right? To put some goodness in the land and believe, right, that something positive will emerge from it.
And where is the hope? It seems like so much in the world today. So many people are having a hard time finding faith, finding hope, finding something to believe in, finding a way to believe in themselves. Where's the road to get back to all that?
The absence of hope in society today is because we have our ladders against the wrong walls. We're looking to the celebrated, the celebrity. We're looking to news outlets that have their own business to drive, I guess you might say it that way. We look to our current generation of politics. That's not solving anything either. So I understand why there's a loss of hope. And I understand hope's like power. I mean, I understand how universal it is, but hope's still it's a waiting game, isn't it? You can hope for a lot of things. You can sit there and hope for something to happen. But the people that I wrote about and the most influential people in all of our lives, they don't hope, believe it or not. They do. They react in a very specific way. They're still reacting in a very specific way. And it is, as we pointed out earlier, it's the small things. And that's a daily practice. I mean, social media, we talked about earlier, has taken over our lives, but there's algorithms and dissonance and discord. You have to, kind of make your judgments about what you want in your life and what you don't, what influences you and what does not, and then who you're around. I mean, I very purposefully don't have anybody in my life who is not uplifting and celebrating me. And I'd like to think that that's what I'm trying to do as well. In my house, a phrase we say all the time: we're happy for that person. So you don't spend a lot of time in jealousy and envy and trying to chip away at somebody's success. That was their success. You be happy for them. Lastly, I would say always be open to having that impact on somebody else. And I'm not talking about the victories per se, right? Because the victories, those are easy to tell. Are easy to tell. What I found, Cameron, is what people often need is the uncertainty, the times that you didn't have the answers, the time you didn't know how it was going to work out, the time when it did seem, as was the case for me quite a few times, when I felt all was lost. I remember sneaking back at this time of year to my dorm room in college because I had no place else to go. 3 times over the course of my life, I had been displaced during the holidays. And I didn't create that. I didn't ask for that, but I was going to make it my responsibility. And I say that to say that people could look at me and say, well, he's an accomplished author and writer, but that's not how I see it. I remember those moments of trying to find my own, chance in the world. And we should share those moments too, because oftentimes the pain of our past is a present reality for somebody else, and they see in our victory the possibility of their own.
That's good stuff. And again, the book, I'll show it to our viewers whenever the listeners are going, I don't see anything. But
it's a great cover, though.
Yes, it is. It is. It's The Lighthouse Effect. And Steve, I want to make sure and let the listeners, the viewers, know where they can find more about not only the book, but the mission and the feat that it's been taking on itself as well.
You can find the book anywhere that books are sold: Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Zondervan's a publisher, so zondervan.com as well. Great partnership that I have with Zondervan. I've actually also created a master class that accompanies a book that you can Google as well. And if all else fails, you can find me on social media and stevepemberton.io. And I do through all of those platforms, Cameron, encourage people to share their stories. Like literally just before you and I jumped on, I received an email from somebody who heard me speak years ago. And she read my book, and her email like stopped me in my tracks. And she was in essence asking, how do I deal with all the loss that I've had? I'm glad I have those platforms, but she sent that quite literally to my website. And I want to encourage people to share their stories, actually. I mean, that's the reason that I have the platforms that I do, because I have found that we're all inspired by those stories that are all around us that might be hiding.
That's right. And again, check out the Lighthouse Effect anywhere you get books. And stevepemberton.io, is that what you said was the website?
Stevepemberton.io. You got it.
All right. Find him on the socials.
Cameron.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, it has been a privilege, a pleasure to visit with you today. I tell you, I hope that we can catch up in the new year, even delve a little deeper, if you will.
That would be great, and I see we are both members of the Bearded Society, so all the more reason to connect.
That's right. Well, Steve, great for your time, and again, thank you so much. Have a great weekend, happy holidays, and a good new year as well.
And the same to you and your family, Cameron. Good spending some time with you.